Welcome to Talking History, a series of talks from the Farnham U3A World History, Ancient, Medieval and Modern group. Please note, the views expressed in this talk are representative of the views held at the time of the material being discussed. They do not necessarily represent the views of the speaker. The Farnham U3A World History, Ancient, Medieval and Modern group, nor the team at the Mr T podcast studio. In this short talk, Diana Butler tells us about Mr Punch. We learn about the characters around him and how he has evolved over the centuries.
The origins of Mr Punch go back in Italy, and we find Harlequin or Pantaloon trace them back to the burlesque mime characters of ancient Rome. Excavation near Herculaneum found a statue with a nutcracker and a twin-humped chin. The sound used by the showman derives from the whistles the Romans used, and these were found at grape harvest sites among the workers near Naples. In the 15th century, Italian puppet shows started. Commedia dell'arte and the comedian Silvio Fiorilli showed Pulcinella, a clown, who also transformed from a stage character to a marionette. Pulcinello means little chicken. He could not endure to be contradicted, and he knocked men down with a cudgel. By 1600, a puppet called Captain Matamoros, or Captain Moorkiller, appeared. By 1700, a bronze statue of a clown, a mime, or a vice with a humpback and a large nose existed. In Spain, Harlequin or Gracioso appeared wearing multicolour pantaloons and inclining to blunder. So good evidence that our Mr Punch is fairly genuine. In England, in the Middle Ages, there had been religious dramas, political satire, and even opera. The clergy cast off the puppets from their mysteries, as they could not be depended upon for Bible stories with their humorous dialogues and popular songs. Dryden makes a mention of Punch, but no other sources are found before Queen Anne. Within Restoration comedy, Edward Ravenscroft at the Theatre Royal in 1677 reproduced Punch on stage with a comedy in the Italian manner. There was Scaramouche, philosopher, Harlequin, a schoolboy, and Bravo, a merchant and magician. In 1719, Hydaspes, a mock opera, was seen in Lincoln's Inn Fields. The Tatler, Spectator and Guardian recorded a Mr Robert Powell and his show opposite St Paul's Church, the original intention of a Punch stage. A master stands in front with a pointer stick and commentates. Behind, a stage lit by footlamps, a female and a male puppet stand. The male has a very lofty conical cap, large ruff, and a considerable paunch, a noisy fellow. There were many other characters, Whittington and his cat, Robin Hood, Mother Goose, and again evidence of political satire. A reference from 1735, I'm that little fellow called Pulcinello, much beauty I carry about me, I'm witty and pretty, and come to delight ye. Ye cannot be merry without me. My cap is like a sugar loaf, and round my collar I wear a ruff. I'd strip and show you my shape in buff, but fear the ladies would flout me. My rising back and distorted breast, whene'er I shew 'em, become a jest. But all in all, I'm one of the best, so nobody should doubt me. Punch acquires a wife Judy and a dog called Toby, although Toby also appears with other characters. Merry England rejoiced at fairs with Punch and his simple wickedness. He crowed his braggart songs, wielded his club, thwacking heads royally, murdered his wife and child and the policeman, and also slayed the devil. He overcame the powers of darkness gloriously. Samuel Pepys in 1660 observed a marionette show featuring an early version of a Punch character in Covent Garden. In London, it was performed by an Italian puppet showman, Pietro Gimonde. Pepys describes the event in his diary as an Italian puppet play that is within the rails there, which is very pretty. Charles Dickens, in 1849, wrote in a letter to Mary Tyler, In my opinion, Punch is one of those extravagant reliefs from the realities of life, which would lose its hold upon the people if it were made moral and instructive. I regard it as quite harmless in its influence, and as an outrageous joke which no one in existence would think of regarding as an incentive to any kind of action or as a model for any kind of conduct. It is possible, I think, that one secret source of pleasure, very generally derived from this performance, is the satisfaction the spectator feels in the circumstance that likenesses of men and women can be so knocked about without any pain or suffering. Most of what I'm talking about has come from a book from the 19th century that gives the classic script of the plays, which we're just about coming to. Before that, the Italian Piccini in 1796 devised a puppet show dialogue and also the trumpet tunes that went with it for the showman that came with the puppet man. And then finally in 1828, George Cruikshank, a Londoner who was trained for etching, produced many illustrations of books and broadsheets, and he was commissioned to produce plates of Punch and Judy. I'm going to go on to some of the features of the plays. So the first thing is, who were the characters? They don't obviously appear in everything, but the list is this. There's Punch, there's his wife Judy, dog Toby, a child, a servant, Molly the maid, or sometimes she's Punch's mistress, the Scaramouche, who is a clown now. Earlier we talked about Scaramouche, the philosopher, so he would be an interesting person to investigate. A courtier, a doctor, a lawyer, the Bede, Hector the horse, a blind man, a constable, policeman Jack, a police officer, the executioner Jack Ketch, and the devil. And then sausages, a crocodile, a ghost and a skeleton came in at some point. The main storyline is that Punch kills the baby, then his wife, and the police officer who comes to arrest him. He outwits a ghost, a crocodile, and a doctor, and convinces the hangman to be hanged in his place. At the play, he even defeats the devil. So I'm just going to read a description from the Cruikshank tale, the instructions for the very end of the play, which is where the devil appears. Here commences a terrific combat between the devil and Punch. In the beginning, the latter has much the worst of it, being hit by his black adversary when and where he pleases. At last, the devil seems to grow weary, and Punch succeeds in planting several heavy blows. The balance being restored, the fight is kept up for some time, and towards the conclusion, Punch has the decided advantage and drives his enemy before him. The devil is stunned by repeated blows on the head and horns and falls forward on the platform, where Punch completes his victory and knocks the breath out of his body. Punch then puts his staff up the back of Devil's black clothes and whirls him around in the air, exclaiming, "Huzza, huzza, the devil is dead," and the curtain falls. So the description of Punch and the story and some of the characters and why would we save Punch. I realised this morning it is a burning house debate, and I had only just suddenly realised this because I heard about these debates but not by that title. And it also struck me that I am actually a wooden puppet, and I also am quite easy to pick up and all the rest of it, so you could actually just pick me up and save me just to be nice about it, I think. So I'm probably going to base my own personal recommendation for why I should be saved on that. The other reference I thought might be an interesting end to why you should save Punch is a quote from Jonathan Swift, or it's some of his poem that he wrote about Punch. "Observe, the audience is in pain while Punch is hid behind the scene, but when they hear his rusty voice, with what impatience they rejoice, and then they value not 2 straws, how Solomon decides the cause. If Punch, to stir their fancy, shows in at the door his monstrous nose, then suddenly draws it back again. Oh, what a pleasure mixed with pain! You every moment think an age, till he appears upon the stage, and first himself you see him clap upon the Queen of Sheba's lap. St. George himself he plays the wagon and mounts astride upon the dragon. He gets the 1,000 thumps and kicks. You cannot leave his roguish tricks. In every action thrust his nose, the reason why no mortal knows. There's not a puppet made of wood, but what would hang him if they could? While teasing all, by all he's teased, how well are these spectators pleased, who in the motion have no share, but purely come to hear and stare, have no concern for sabra's sake, which gets the better, saint or snake, provided Punch, for there's the jest, he's soundly mauled and plague the rest.
This podcast has been produced by the Mr. T Podcast Studio in association with the Farnham U3A World History, Ancient, Medieval and Modern Group. Thank you very much for listening to this talk.